Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. This episode is called Criminal Cars and Their Secret Technology. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe, follow, and comment on the show. Also, I'd like to tell you about a service called HollywoodIsCalling.com. It's a great service that allows you to purchase live calls for more than 100 of your favorite celebrities, so check them out. It's something you can buy for yourself or for someone on a special occasion. A live 15-second call is $19.95 and a live 30-second call is $29.95. So give it a try. HollywoodIsCalling.com. Now let's get started. The more criminal activity increases, the more popular certain vehicles become amongst the criminal class. Today we're going to take a look at the type of vehicles and technology that is popular with criminals throughout history as well as in the modern era. First, let's begin with the selection criteria that criminals use when deciding what kind of car they need for a particular crime. There are several major criteria when selecting the right car for the right crime. The first is speed and getaway power. If you're doing a bank robbery or some other kind of theft that requires you to be able to outrun the police quickly, then you need a vehicle with two things. It has to have high horsepower and a supercharged engine, and it'll need an upgraded high-end suspension and brake system. You would think that if criminals wanted a high horsepower car, then they would always use a sports car. But the truth of the matter is that sports cars are too high profile and too easy to spot for the police. So when it comes to criminal jobs, they aren't used very often. So what they'll do is they'll select a nondescript, conventional looking sedan that no one will notice on the streets, and they'll customize it with a very high horsepower engine, a supercharger, and other additions. The next criteria for selecting a vehicle to commit a lot of crimes with is its ability to be customized with bulletproof armor. Whenever you want to add bulletproof armor to a vehicle, you have to start with a car that has the space and dimensions needed to add that armor. There are many cars that are inherently too small or inadequate from an engineering standpoint to allow one to add much armor or sophisticated security features designed to protect the occupants. That's why most criminals will choose a mid-size or larger sedan to have modified. It's because they are capable of incorporating all the armor and technology that criminals need on a day-to-day basis to get away with their crimes. The next criteria that many criminals require is enough size to allow their people to design and engineer hidden compartments into the car so that it can transport drugs or weapons that can't be found by a conventional police search. These hidden compartments are also used to transport money, weapons, and human beings across the country. They will actually re-engineer large parts of the car so that some sections of it can be enlarged in a way that can accommodate the hidden storage areas without being too obvious to the casual observer. The other thing that's really interesting about these hidden compartments is the way they are accessed. There is no visible button or clamp or latch on these compartments that would make it obvious to someone searching through the car that there might be a hidden compartment there. The way these compartments are accessed is with special multi-level electronic access codes. For example, you might have to hit the left window door button at the same time that you press the brake pedal twice. Or you might have to tap the cruise control button twice while you put the transmission in reverse. Police officers and Border Patrol officers will tell you that the key to these multi-level electronic door opening sequences and signals is that it's almost always a part of a multi-part combination of button sequences that you would never just stumble onto or accidentally press in real life. It has to be a very unique combination of buttons to press in a very specific order or sequence to get the compartment to open up. The last criteria is often extremely important, and that is that the car has to be nondescript and completely forgettable. You don't want the car that attracts attention at all. Everybody thinks that criminals, billionaires, politicians, and rock stars like to travel in very high-profile black SUVs. But the truth of the matter is they don't want to be noticed. So they'll often travel in a gray van that has been secretly enhanced with armor or security features. The vans typically look like something a soccer mom would take her kids to school in. The less noticeable, the better. Next, we're going to do a brief historical review of some of the famous criminal cars from the past, and then we'll tell you what criminals like to drive in the modern era, as well as tell you about some of the really interesting new technology they're using. First, we have the 1928 Cadillac Town Sedan, which was the car of choice for Al Capone. It had a 90 horsepower engine, which was a lot by the standards of that year. Remember, this was 92 years ago. It also had 3,000 pounds of armored steel and bullet-resistant glass. Even though the glass was bullet-resistant, Capone still had a special drop-down rear window designed into the car so that if it was being followed, they could lower the window and begin firing at the police who were following them. Also, this armor brought the weight of the vehicle up to 9,000 pounds, which was a lot. Al also had the vehicle painted green and black so that it looked a lot like the Cadillacs owned by the city of Chicago. The car was basically a rolling tank. Next, we have the 1932 Ford Model 18 V8. It was made famous by bank robbers like John Dillinger and Bonnie and Clyde. Many of the criminals who used it wrote letters to Henry Ford thanking him for making a vehicle fast enough to let them get away from the police when being pursued. The car was so well liked by criminals that a number of them would end up getting killed in their vehicles. Next, we have the 1990 Chevrolet Caprice. This car was popular with criminals for a variety of reasons. First, it was often used by law enforcement, which meant that if you owned one, then you might often be mistaken as a police car when you drove around at night. The next thing that made it so popular was that it was spacious enough to allow criminals to drop a large, powerful engine into. In addition to the engine compartment, it was also large enough to let you put all sorts of drugs, contraband, and bodies in the trunk of the car. Lastly, it was fairly nondescript looking, which is the sort of invisibility you want when you're driving around town with all sorts of illegal merchandise in the car. Next, we head into the modern era of criminal cars. What makes this more interesting is that not only are the cars heavily armored, but they also include some really amazing technology designed to help the criminals in all sorts of fascinating ways. First, there is the 1961 Lincoln Continental. It was fast, spacious, and very easy to modify with armor and other technology designed to keep the occupants safe. But the problem was that once the president himself was killed inside one of these cars, then a lot of criminals got very paranoid and superstitious and decided to switch to a different car. Next, we have the Ferrari Testarossa. This was an amazing car, not just because it was fast and beautiful, but because if you drove one around Miami back in the day, then you were announcing to the world that you had the kind of money that just screamed, "I am a rich cocaine dealer." The joke back then was that if you drove your Testarossa for more than a few blocks through Ocean Drive in Miami, you were guaranteed to get one of two things: a marriage proposal or a machine gun blast from a rival drug gang. Sometimes you'd get both on the same day. This was also the car that was made famous by the Miami Vice TV show, and once that show began to air, it dramatically increased the popularity and the market value of these cars. Ironically, it caused a lot of drug dealers to avoid them because driving one around town would put you on the radar of every vice cop in the city. Next, we have El Chapo's Mercedes G-Class. As head of the Sinaloa cartel, Joaquin Guzman Loero is one of the most famous criminals in the world. El Chapo had an estimated fortune of more than $2 billion and was ranked by Forbes magazine as one of the world's richest people. He also had a very long list of famous cars. Some of his cars included a Jeep Sahara, Dodge Viper, a Mercedes G-Class, and a Dodge Challenger SRT Hellcat. Now, the Mercedes G-Wagon had a 5.5-liter twin-turbo V8 that put out 544 horsepower through its 6 wheels. It had an 18-inch ground clearance, and you could go from 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds, even though, get ready for this, even though it weighed 8 tons. Compare that to the average police car, which might take 8 or 9 seconds to get up to 60 miles an hour. In addition to all the cars he had in his fleet, he also had a large number of motorcycles that he used for various criminal activities, most notably assassination. The next highly popular car that is loved by criminals is the Cadillac CTS V. They put a Corvette Z6 engine into this car to dramatically increase its speed. In addition to accommodating 5 adults, it could do 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds because its engine was putting out 640 horsepower. While this beautiful car looks subtle and sophisticated, it also had the performance needed by drug dealers and criminals everywhere to get away from law enforcement as well as other criminals. Not only have the vehicles used by criminals changed a great deal over the years, but the technology used by them to stay safe has also been remarkable. First, there is the communications equipment used by these criminal cars. Many of them now have encrypted satellite phones built into the vehicle. They also have hidden compartments that will contain a dozen disposable burner phones that can be used for a single conversation and then thrown out the window as you drive away. The next thing that's getting more popular with gangsters and cartels is changing license plates every 24 hours. This is an obvious attempt to deceive law enforcement. In addition to bulletproofing and run flat tires, something new that criminals love is to build in anti-surveillance technology that can detect whenever law enforcement or a rival drug gang has placed a tracking, surveillance device, or homing device on their car. Another thing that's getting more popular is called a gun cannon. Let's say you're driving down the street with a gun in the car that you've used in other crimes, maybe even murders. When you suddenly realize you're being followed by the police. So what do? Well, you speed the car up to 70 or 80 miles an hour, and then you put the murder weapon in a small gun cannon that fires it out of the car with such force and velocity that it may land several thousand feet away, making it very hard for the cops to ever find it. Another thing that criminals love is a new police radio and cell phone frequency jammer technology that allows them to block police radios and cell phones for up to half a mile away in every direction, so as to make it harder for the police to coordinate their efforts to track and follow the criminals. So with that, I want to thank you very much for watching, and we will talk to you soon.